beyond with Shemery, where the questions matter more than the answers, and every conversation opens a door.
There is a version of sovereignty that sounds beautiful when spoken as spiritual language. It says, I'm sovereign, my field is clear, no one has power over me, I do not consent to interference, and I stand in my own authority. And all of that may be true, but sovereignty that only exists in the energetic field and never makes its way into ordinary life is not fully embodied yet. Because sovereignty is not magical invincibility. It does not mean nothing can affect you. It does not mean physical reality no longer matters. It does not mean your body's warning signals can be ignored because your spirit is involved. It does not mean unsafe people become safe because you're holding a higher vibration. It does not mean discernment can be replaced with certainty. Sovereignty needs shoes. It needs to walk on the ground. It needs to know when to lock the door, make the phone call, rest the body, keep the receipt, book the appointment, say no, leave the room, or choose a different path home. This is where spiritual language can become distorted. And there is another important layer here. Sovereignty does not operate in a vacuum. It matters where you are, who you're with, what kind of power is operating, what the practical consequences are, and whether the situation is relational, physical, legal, social, financial, political, or systemic. Sovereignty inside a relationship may look like telling the truth, setting a boundary, or refusing to hand over your inner authority. Sovereignty in a wider world, still shaped by power over, may look different. Sometimes it looks like strategy, sometimes it looks like documentation, sometimes it looks like leaving quietly instead of arguing. Sometimes it looks like complying enough to stay safe while not inwardly consenting. Sometimes it may look like using the systems available. And sometimes it looks like choosing the safest route rather than the most defiant one. Because sovereignty does not mean no one can affect you. It does not mean external power is imaginary. It does not mean institutions, laws, violence, money, hierarchy, social pressures, or physical risk cannot touch your life. They can. Sovereignty means that even when external power affects your circumstances, it does not get final ownership of your meaning, your dignity, your inner authority, or your right to choose the cleanest available action. This distinction matters. Sometimes people speak about sovereignty as though it means nothing outside of them has any effect, as though being energetically sovereign makes them immune to harm, consequences, manipulation, illness, exhaustion, poor choices, an unsafe environment, or the physical world reality. But that is not sovereignty. That is a fantasy wearing spiritual clothing. True sovereignty does not bypass reality. It includes reality. It listens to the body. It reads the room. It pays attention to timing. It notices who has access. It notices what something costs. It notices whether love is being used as a reason to override a limit. It notices where the spiritual confidence has quietly become denial. One of the simplest tests I use is what I think of as the dark alley test. If you were walking at night and your body says, don't go down that dark alley, sovereignty does not say, I'm spiritually protected, therefore nothing can happen to me. Sovereignty says, thank you body, I will take another route. That is not fear, that is discernment. There is a difference between living in fear and listening to reality. There is a difference between being open-hearted and being open access. There's also a difference between trusting your field and ignoring your environment. And there is a difference between refusing power over and refusing to acknowledge consequence. The distinction matters because sovereignty can easily be confused with control. Power over says, I will make reality obey me. Sovereignty says, I will remain in right relationship with myself while I respond to reality. Power over tries to dominate the field. Sovereignty listens, chooses, adjusts, and remains clear. Power over needs to win. Sovereignty needs to stay true. Power over overrides consent. Sovereignty protects consent, including your own. And this is important. Sovereignty does not mean isolation. It does not mean there is no room for another person. It does not mean love, partnership, care, support, or community have no place. Sovereignty means there is a room for two people. It means I can be in relationship without disappearing. I can love without handing over ownership of my body, my choices, my inner world, or my center. I can stay connected without becoming occupied. I can care without becoming the emotional container for both of us. That is not separation. That is right relationship. This is why grounded sovereignty includes practical choices. It includes boundaries. It includes rest, money decisions, health care, dental care. It includes noticing exhaustion before collapse. It includes not explaining yourself to someone who has already decided not to hear you. And it also includes not giving unsafe people endless access because you are trying to prove you are compassionate. Essentially, it includes not mistaking spiritual connection for permission to abandon common sense. Energetic sovereignty might say, my field belongs to me. Practical sovereignty says, and therefore I will not keep putting myself where I am repeatedly harmed. Energetic sovereignty might say, I do not consent to this interference. Practical sovereignty says, and therefore I will change the password, close the door, end the conversation, remove my attention, or stop participating in the pattern. Energetic sovereignty might say, I reclaim my authority. Practical sovereignty says, and therefore I will trust my own assessment, even when someone else insists I should agree with theirs. This is where sovereignty becomes real, not in the declaration zone, in the behavior that follows. And for sensitive people, empaths, intuitives, healers, and practitioners, there is another layer of practical sovereignty. Because not everything that arrives in your field is yours to open. Someone can think of you. You may feel the ping. A client may book an appointment and your body may begin to register the thread before the session has even started. You can touch an object and feel the history. You can walk into a room and sense the emotional weather of the place. You can feel someone's intensity, not because they are consciously sending it to you, but because their inner state is traveling with contact. In modern language, it is a little like receiving an email. The message may be real, the sender may be real, but that does not mean every attachment is safe, relevant, clean, or deliverable. Sometimes the ping is simply a ping. Sometimes the payload belongs to someone else. Sometimes a person is thinking of you cleanly enough, but their own internal weather is attached to the thought. Sometimes their agitation, resentment, grief, longing, urgency, or rumination has nothing to do with you, yet it arrives with your name on the envelope. This is where many sensitive people get caught. The body feels the intensity and assumes it means something. It assumes the charge is evidence. It assumes the arrival is permission. It assumes that because something touched the edge of the field, it must be opened, understood, metabolized, soothed, cleaned, or carried. But awareness is not access. Contact is not consent. Being thought of is not the same as being available. Touching an object is not permission to open every layer of history it carries. Entering a room does not mean you become the clearing mechanism for the room. And a client booking an appointment does not mean the session has begun. This is not about shutting sensitivity down. It's about giving sensitivity manners, timing, filters, and sovereignty. A strong reaction is not proof of a stronger gift. Overwhelm is not the measure of intuition. The goal is not to feel everything loudly. The goal is to know what is yours and what is not, what is asking for a response, what needs to wait for the proper container, and what should never be opened at all. This is the difference between the unguarded empath field and the sovereign empath field. The unguarded empath says, I felt it, therefore I must receive it. The sovereign empath says, I noticed it, now I choose whether it is mine to engage. That one pause changes everything, because there is a kind of spiritual language that can sound powerful while keeping aversive passive. I am protected, but are you listening? I am sovereign, but are you choosing? I do not consent, but are you still staying in the same agreement through your actions? I am above fear, but are you also above discernment? This is not about becoming suspicious of everything. It is not about closing the heart. It is not about assuming danger everywhere. It's about learning to pause before opening. To ask, what is the channel? Did this come through a person, a place, an object, a message, a thought, a memory, or an appointment? What is the actual ping? What is the attached weather? Is it mine? Is this addressed to me? Is this the correct time? Is there consent? Is there a container? And then to choose. Receive what is truly yours. Hold what belongs in proper session time. Quarantine what is unclear. Return what belongs to another field. Delete what is not relevant. Leave unopened what was never yours to carry. That is not coldness. That is not spiritual failure. That is practical sovereignty. It's about understanding that the body, the field, the mind, and the physical world are not separate compartments. They speak to each other. If the body tightens, listen. If the field feels noisy, pause. If the mind starts justifying something that the body knows is not right, slow down. If someone's words sound loving but their behaviour repeatedly costs you stability, believe the behaviour. Sovereignty is not a floating crown. It is a lived relationship with your centre. And your centre does not only exist in meditation. It exists when you are tired. It exists when someone pressures you. It exists when your body says no before your mind has a neat explanation. It exists when a choice looks spiritually impressive but practically unwise. It exists when something arrives in your field and the old pattern says, open it. This is why sovereignty needs shoes. Shoes mean embodiment. Shoes means the path matters. Shoes mean you are not just declaring your truth from a cloud of light. You are walking that truth through a real world with real people, real risks, real bodies, real consequences, real fields, and real choices. Sovereignty with shoes says, I can be spiritually open and practically discerning. I can be compassionate without being endlessly available. I can trust energy and still lock the door. I can listen to spirit and still listen my body. I can refuse fear without refusing information. I can remain loving without giving up my boundaries. I can honor a connection without abandoning myself. I can notice a ping without opening the whole attachment. I can sense a field without becoming responsible for it. I can be intuitive without turning my sensitivity into public proof. That is the version of sovereignty I trust, not the version that claims nothing can touch me, the version that knows what can touch it and chooses wisely. The version that understands that being sovereign does not mean being unaffected. It means being in right relationship with what does affect you. It means noticing where your yes is true, where your no is needed, where your body is warning you, where your field is being crowded, where your energy is leaking, where your compassion has become over-access, and where your spiritual beliefs may need to put their shoes on. It means noticing what arrives without assuming every arrival is an assignment. It means letting the ping be a ping. It means letting the weather belong where it belongs. It means allowing sensitivity to report to sovereignty, not responsibility. Because sovereignty is not an escape from being human. It is a deeper way of inhabiting being human. It's not power over the world. It's not denial of the world. It's not immunity from the world. It is the capacity to remain yourself while you move through the world with discernment, humility, courage, and care. And sometimes the most sovereign thing you can do is very simple. Take the other road, lock the door, make the appointment, rest before collapse. Say no, that does not work for me. Stop trying to prove that you are evolved enough to ignore the obvious. Listen to the body, read the room, check the attachment before you open the file. Let the ping be a ping. Let the weather belong where it belongs. Let sensitivity report to sensitivity, not responsibility. Put your shoes on and walk wisely.
Every journey changes us a little. Thank you for letting this one be part of yours. Until we meet again.